Most PAs are making 5-figure and even 6-figure mistakes with their student loan debt, especially federal student loans. If you want to avoid the top 3 mistakes PAs are making with their student loan debt, keep watching this video. I'm Kristen Burton, and I'm a critical care PA. I graduated PA school with $161,000 in student loan debt, like most PAs, and within 7 years was a student loan debt-free millionaire. Now, by the way, if you want access to free training on how to build wealth as a PA, click below to get access to the Millionaires in Medicine Club for free. Let's dive into the first mistake PAs make with student loan debt, but stick around till the end because mistake number 3 is the one that actually costs over $80,000. The first is accidentally choosing taxable loan forgiveness. Now, the common scenario where this happens is someone gets on an income-driven repayment plan, any of the income-driven plans, has a high debt-to-income ratio, and doesn't understand that at the end of 20 to 25 years, their loans won't be paid off with that very small monthly payment that they're making, and the rest will be forgiven. But that forgiveness is taxable, right? This is different than public service loan forgiveness, which has tax-free forgiveness. With taxable loan forgiveness, the amount forgiven is taxed as ordinary income as though you earned it, which means you have a tax bill to prepare for. Now, in some instances, taxable loan forgiveness is the best plan. Not that often, honestly, in the medical professional world, particularly in professions that have a whole plethora of qualifying employers available for public service loan forgiveness. But in some instances, like, for example, chiropractors or vets who tend to have less options in terms of qualifying employers, the plan may very intentionally be taxable loan forgiveness. But what most commonly happens is someone is doing this and doesn't know that they're doing it. Not only do you need to plan accordingly for the tax bill, sometimes this is the most expensive way for you to manage your student loan debt. Here's an example of what that can look like. In this instance, the loan balance was $189,000, all federal. You can see that this person doesn't have a qualifying employer for PSLF. And so their options are standard repayment, accelerated repayment, or taxable loan forgiveness. Now, I'm not going to get into the SAVE plan versus the other income-driven repayment plans in light of the recent injunction, or this will quickly become outdated, but you can see the principle of being on an income-driven repayment plan and not having a qualifying employer for PSLF, and instead being on a taxable loan forgiveness path. Now, in this case, the monthly payment for this person, obviously this is income driven, right? So the monthly payment's about $1,200 on the SAVE plan, for example. And then if you would switch to a standard repayment plan over 10 years, it would be a little over $2,000. And if you accelerate that, of course, then the monthly payment would be higher. So what happens is someone in this exact spot might say, oh man, my colleagues are on the SAVE plan, my friends are on the SAVE plan, their payment's less than mine. I don't really want to put a cash outflow of $2,000 out, and so I'm going to drop to one of those income-driven repayment plans. Well, when you do that, you have chosen taxable loan forgiveness, right? Because in this instance, at the $189K on a PA salary, this person does have an amount that's forgiven at the end, and it's taxable, generating taxes, of course, listed down here. But what I'd like to point out is that the total cost of repayment, when you're doing it this way, after tax, ends up being over $100,000 more to pursue taxable loan forgiveness. Now, again, you can make an argument for this approach if you're going to invest 40 or 50% of your income so that you're building a ton of assets and taking advantage of the increased cash flow of the income-driven repayment plan. Again, you can make an argument. But most folks aren't doing that. Let's be real. Most folks aren't investing enough anyways to have a standard retirement and are on the income-driven repayment plan simply because it's common, it's talked about, and they know about it. And so if that's you, make sure that it's an intentional decision if you choose taxable loan forgiveness. Make sure you understand that it may have a higher total cost of repayment for you and that you do need a plan for a tax bill. Now, of course, if you can't plan for a tax bill 20 to 25 years down the line, we've got bigger problems, right? You've got a lot of time. But you need to understand that that's the path that you've taken. Now, The second big mistake is ignoring the importance of having a qualified employer. Remember, qualified for public service loan forgiveness means a nonprofit or a government agency. So if your employer qualifies you for PSLF, the higher your debt to income ratio, the more that matters. And so if you're a brand new grad and you're looking at jobs and you're calculating pay differentials and you have a high student loan burden, most of which is federal, one job has a qualifying employer and one doesn't, your total money gain or loss is huge and way exceeds any kind of compensation difference in salary. Let me show you the numbers. This is an example. This is a PA with $354,000 in federal student loan debt. Initially started out practice with a non-qualifying employer in private practice, dermatology, which is very common for that subspecialty to be private practice. For this person, the difference in being on PSLF here versus any of the other options in total cost of repayment is at least $300,000 less. And so when you think about like, okay, maybe I'm going to earn 10 or 20K a year more in private practice than I would at that nonprofit employer, which maybe is a large academic medical center with harder to negotiate pay. How long does it take me to earn back the additional costs in student loans that I'm incurring by not having the qualifying employer? So for example, it's highly likely that this person would end up on taxable loan forgiveness with a non-qualifying employer. Why? Well, their student loan payment on a standard 10-year plan exceeds $4,000 a month. That's really hard to pull off on a PA salary. And so more than likely, in order to make any kind of cash flow reality, they're going to end up on an income-driven repayment plan and end up pursuing taxable loan forgiveness. So when you look at this, and that tells you they're going to spend an extra $400,000 plus in student loans. Now, how long does it take you working in private practice to earn an extra $400,000 beyond what you would have earned with a qualifying employer? Okay, when you start to do the math that way, you start to think about the big picture, and it very much matters the higher your debt to income ratio, whether or not your employer is qualified. And even if you make $5,000 or $10,000 more in private practice, the ability to use public service loan forgiveness may save you multiple six figures, totally negating that small increase in income. Now, the lower your debt to income ratio, the less of a change this is for you, but you can see that, especially with high dollar student loan debt, this makes a huge difference. Now, of course, the reason that this person really can't get by on the standard repayment plan is not only their basic bills, but like we all have to be investing, right? When you think about the continuum of personal finance, figuring out your student loan debt is right here. Like once you're free of high interest debt, you need to have a strategy in play for your student loan debt. And the strategy has to allow you to do this and this critical cash reserves, right? Meaning build an emergency fund and becoming a consistent investor. What is a consistent investor? It is someone who invests 20% of their gross income at least for 3 months in a row, right? Then you're consistent. And so, in order for that person on the last slide to be a consistent investor, to move down their financial continuum, they need to create a student loan plan that accommodates that. And that's why the standard repayment plan is unlikely to work in that scenario. Now, of course, if you want to learn more about investing, you can actually get a free membership in the Millionaires in Medicine Club. If you click the link in or around below this video, you can get a free membership to that and start being in community with medical professionals who are actually building wealth, doing this stuff, learning about investing, real estate, tax strategy, etc. So the third mistake that people make is choosing the wrong tax filing status, particularly if you're doing public service loan forgiveness and you're married. Okay. And this happens a lot because people will start off on the PSLF path and they'll be single. And at some point in the 10 years, the 120 qualifying payments, they get married. And maybe their spouse has student loan debt. Maybe they don't. Maybe their spouse is a six-figure earner. And if that's the case, it really changes your PSLF numbers depending on the tax filing status that you choose. So here's an example. In this instance, for these numbers, the person in question, the medical professional in question, has $197K as student loan debt. Their partner is a six-figure earner with no federal student loans. So you can see, and I'll kind of highlight the key point here. If you look at them doing PSLF here, this person, gentleman, doing PSLF on an income-driven repayment plan as married filing jointly versus PSLF on the same income-driven repayment plan, married filing separately. Look at their total cost of loan repayment. It goes from $172K if selecting married filing jointly to less than 100, $94K if they pursue married filing separately. And so that one single decision saves them about $80,000 in student loan repayment. Now, of course, you do lose some small deductions when switching from married filing jointly to married filing separately. You also have a lot of difficulty with investing in IRAs, but $80,000 is not chump change. So this is a really important topic of discussion with your CPA to decide what tax filing status is going to be best, not only to optimize your deductions for that year, but also to optimize your PSLF journey and making sure that you're minimizing your student loan repayment and maximizing tax-free forgiveness at the end.